Since the first attacks on Iran, the White House and the Pentagon have struggled to contain their enthusiasm over their chance to test out the latest military hardware and software at their disposal. The U.S. has spent years investing in AI-enabled targeting systems, autonomous weapons, and long-range so-called precision missiles, tools that make identifying and striking targets easier, faster, and more dangerous than ever. And as has been the case in Gaza, AI-powered systems appear to be playing a central role in how this war is being conducted, guiding decisions that have life and death consequences. Mahmoudi is a researcher with Amnesty Tech, as well as an assistant professor at Cambridge University. He's been digging into this topic for a while now and joins us here in the studio. Matt, Donald Trump boasts about having the greatest military in the world. Is this the moment, do you think, that he and the Pentagon, the Department of War, have been waiting for to test their vision of what war in the future looks like?
It's clear that we're watching a new form of warfare emerge, and we've seen this going back to the start of the genocide in Gaza. We saw target acquisition systems like Lavender and Gospel that rely on large tranches of information, things like social media data, any databases that the government might hold, to make determinations about whether someone is a combatant or not. In the context of what we might be witnessing here in Iran and the Middle East through the use of a large language model, we're seeing a lot of those same technologies packaged together in a effectively chat prompt-based interface that allows the military to go in and simply put in a human speak level prompt that asks for particular targets to be generated that have particular characteristics. There is this zealousness and overzealousness with the even idea that you can simply have a quick in and out strike through the use of artificial intelligence systems. Of course, it is an opportunistic moment that the US government seems to have taken. And we've seen this also through their relationships with tech companies who were all too happy, even just before, days before the war, to provide their technology, no questions asked, until the very, very last moment.
Now, we've seen how devastating some of these AI-powered strikes can be. That girls' school in Minab, a bombing that killed at least 165 schoolgirls and staff. From what you are seeing, how lethal, though, how accurate, and just how autonomous are these systems?
It is incredibly difficult to say how accurate these systems are because it really comes down to what your understanding of accuracy in these systems are. We look at things like Lavender, target acquisition systems, for example, in which there is a claim that by using disparate sources of data, you can generate a list of targets that can be hit with precision, but when you end up with a list that's, say, a list of 40,000 names, you start to wonder, who vetted these names? How do we end up with these names? Was it simply by proximity to particular facilities? Was it through posts that people made on social media? These probabilistic systems work simply through a relational approach in which you, having been connected, for example, on a social media profile to a particular individual who may have said something or who may have a particular affiliation, renders you a threat. In the same case, we're seeing in Iran now, thousands of airstrikes on what seems like indiscriminate grounds, right? And you start to wonder, to what extent is there any accuracy at play at all? Sure, if your aim is to decimate the entire country, you could make the argument that you have acted with great accuracy in performing the devastation across Iran. But did you achieve the goal of eliminating the particular individuals that, say, you were interested in targeting? And this is where target acquisition gets it wrong. It is a AI washing of the attempt to establish a legitimate target. It's simply saying that because the system said that these targets are the correct one, that makes it a legitimate target, which is a violation of international law because individuals who are in the chain of command have not actively been involved in actually vetting and understanding who they're targeting and why.
Another way to put it is, no matter how advanced these systems are, the failings come at the end where the human component still is.
That's correct. And in the context of, for example, the disputes, the controversy between Anthropic and the US government, You see an instance in which Anthropic is insisting that they have a restriction written into the contract that they hold with the US government, with the Department of War, that says that they are against the usage of autonomous weapon systems without oversight. However, at this rate, oversight can be defined in any number of ways. The US government can say that somebody had a look at the list of targets for 15 seconds, for 2 minutes, and they deemed that as sufficient without ever having interrogated how the particular large language model arrived at the actual list in the first place. So the oversight itself is incredibly permissive.
So Anthropic's beef with Trump and Trump's beef with Anthropic, we read about that, we saw the news reports, but are they the outlier here? Are they the only ones who are fighting back?
The interesting framing here is the fighting back component of it, because the company was very willing to enter this contract to begin with the US government, with the Pentagon. And we've seen a number of other AI companies that have, over the last few years, entered contracts with the Pentagon and Department of War, with the US Immigration Customs Enforcement, who has been actively involved in military tactics in the streets of Minnesota, of Minneapolis. And so the involvement of AI companies in tactics of warfare is not new. The fact that Anthropic was able to demonstrate resistance merely days before the strikes took place, the preemptive airstrikes on Iran, allowed them to position themselves at a moral high ground that lets them, on the one hand, sell their product for being incredibly potent in the context of warfare, as we see now, a couple of weeks on from the initial strikes. It has been revealed by reports that Claude, which is their product, may have been used in the context of the airstrikes in Iran, which again gives them potency as a brand and as a company that's developing this technology. They can also posture to the fact that they resisted the government, and in fact you should be using their product at every turn because they are the good guys in this context. And that dichotomy that they're able to balance as a company of, on the one hand, having developed a product that can be used at scale for warfare, and on the other hand also being, again, the morally superior AI company, allows them to bring in the profit, the kind of reach that AI companies can only dream of.
The use of these systems can make it difficult for some people to determine whether some of these attacks were deliberate, the result of intelligence failures, or the result of errors in AI itself. Is that creating a way for militaries to evade accountability and just say the machine got it wrong?
It's really important to understand that under international law, you have to have a legitimate target under international humanitarian law when it comes to airstrikes, when it comes to the use of force. And you have to have a chain of command in which there is accountability of some variety. There has to be a clear understanding of who is exercising the command and who is then following the command. With the insertion of AI, we have a complete muddying up of who made the decision to kill to begin with. Was it the system? Was it the designer who designed the tool to begin with? Was it the person who sat and operated the interface or took the indicator that it was giving the person? And these are fundamentally questions that mean that these systems are more likely to automate killing at scale and create a sort of a dehumanization because it doesn't allow for individuals that operate them to really get into the weeds of interrogating systems that they simply follow. We have been calling constantly at Amnesty International, at the Stop Killer Robots Coalition, for an internationally binding instrument on autonomous weapon systems precisely because of this, because there is currently no way of ensuring that there is any oversight, there is no accountability, and companies are some of the parties here that are able to simply skirt all of that whilst deriving most of the profit.
What you're saying is that the fog of war, which was already thick, is being made thicker by AI.
Absolutely.
Matt Mahmoudi of Amnesty Tech, Cambridge University, thanks for speaking with us here at the Listening Post today.
Thanks for having me.